I never thought my son would do this. The call came at 3:11 p.m. as the snow began to fall, coating the world outside in a cold, unforgiving blanket. Marta's voice trembled on the other end of the line. Aaron, Tyler Seps at the bank. He Seps trying to withdraw 150 grand from your CDs, and there's Seps a forged power of attorney on file. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. The words hit me like a freight train, leaving my chest tight and my breath shallow. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment I couldn't even feel the weight of my hands gripping the phone. The coldness of the winter air outside seeped into my bones, but it was nothing compared to the freezing realization that hit me. My son, my own flesh and blood, was trying to rob me. This wasn't just money. It was my life's work, my future, and Joanne's legacy, all that we had built together. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there in the silence of my workshop as if the walls were closing in around me. My mind was screaming, but my body was frozen. What had I done to deserve this? What had I missed? Marta Sitt's voice pulled me back. Aaron, you need to get here. Now, he sits, trying to go through with it. I sit'll keep him here, but you need to stop him. I didn't know how or what to say. I just knew I couldn't let this go on. Not like this, not with my future, my wife's legacy, on the line. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and rushed to the truck. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. The storm outside was unforgiving. The snow swirling violently, the wipers struggling to keep up with the blizzard. But it was nothing compared to the storm inside me. The anger, the betrayal, and most of all, the confusion. Tyler, my son, the one I had raised. The one I trusted, the one I thought I knew. How had it come to this? What had Kayla done to him? I pushed my truck through the slick streets of Cleveland, my mind a whirlwind of anger and disbelief. The familiar streets I had driven 1,000 times seemed foreign now. The world outside, blanketed in white, felt cold and distant, much like the boy I was rushing to stop from taking everything I had worked for. When I finally reached the bank, I parked so hard that the tires skidded. I didn't care about the cold biting through my coat. I didn't care about anything. The only thing that mattered was getting inside and stopping this madness before it went any further. I stormed through the front door, the bell above it ringing softly, but it sounded louder than it should have. Marta was standing behind the counter, her eyes wide and anxious, her fingers trembling as they clutched the phone. I could see she was doing her best to hold it together, but even she could sense the gravity of the situation. "The lister's still in there," she said quietly, glancing nervously toward the back office. "I don't know how long I can stall them. I told them I needed to check something, but you need to stop this. I can let them get away with it." I nodded, but the coldness I felt earlier hadn't gone away. It was still there, settling deep inside me like a lump of ice. I could hear my boots clacking against the marble floor as I walked toward the office, the sound echoing in the otherwise quiet space. Each step felt heavier than the last. And then I saw them. Tyler, my son, standing there at the teller counter, looking more nervous than I had ever seen him. His eyes were darting around the room and his hands were wringing together, a sign of the desperation that had taken hold of him. And there beside him, Kayla, her hand resting possessively on his arm, her gaze sharp and calculating. The same woman I'd tolerated, hoping that Tyler would grow out of this phase. Now she was the one pulling the strings. She had dragged him into this mess and I couldn't stomach it. "Tyler," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. I didn't raise my voice, but it felt like the words hit him harder than any scream could. "What the hell is this?" His eyes locked onto mine, wide and filled with a mixture of fear and shame. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Kayla for support, his lips trembling as if he were searching for a way out. "Dad, it's not what it looks like," he stammered, his voice cracking under the pressure. "I swear, I just need a little help. Just for a couple of weeks. I still pay it back. I still pay it all back." Kayla said, Kayla said, I cut him off, the bitterness rising in my chest. "You still trying to steal from me, Tyler. My retirement, my future. For what? Some gambling debts?" Kayla stepped in front of him then, her body language all too familiar, like she was trying to shield him from the consequences of his actions. She tilted her head, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Aaron, listen," she said, her voice laced with sweetness that I knew wasn't real. "Tyler's just trying to fix things. You know how hard he's been working. This isn't about stealing from you." I could feel my blood begin to boil, but I kept it under control. "I trusted you," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "I trusted you both, and this is how you repay me." Her smile faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered. "You don't understand, Aaron," she said, her voice turning cold. "Tyler Sepp's just trying to survive. He Sepp's not the bad guy here." I turned to look at my son. His eyes were downcast, unable to meet mine. My heart ached. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about betrayal. This was about the son I had raised, the son who had promised to take care of me in my old age. And now he was standing here trying to take everything from me. For what? To fix his own mess? "I can believe this," I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. "After everything, Tyler? This is how you repay me? Over some stupid gamble?" Tyler opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes were glassy, and I could see the conflict inside him. But I wasn't going to make excuses for him. Not anymore. "Get out," I said, my voice firm, cutting through the tension. "Get out, both of you, now." They hesitated. Tyler took a step back, his face pale, but Kayla, she didn't hesitate. She simply turned, her heels clicking on the floor, and walked toward the door. Tyler followed her, his steps slow and reluctant. I stood there, staring at the empty space they had left behind. The silence that followed was deafening. The bank felt smaller now, and I felt more alone than I had in years. My son had just betrayed me, and I couldn't even process it. I stood there for a long time, my mind racing. How had I gotten to this point? How had everything I built, everything I trusted, come crashing down so quickly? Tyler was still my son, but he wasn't the boy I had raised. The boy who had sat in this very shop, playing with toy cars, laughing, dreaming about his future. That boy was gone, and in his place stood a man I didn't recognize. I had no answers. I had no plan, but one thing was clear: I would get to the bottom of this. I would protect what was mine, what Joanne and I had worked for, and no matter how much it hurt, I would get justice. But first I had to figure out how to fix this, because I couldn't do it alone anymore. I sat in my truck for a while after they left, the engine running and the heater cranked up to full blast, but all I could feel was cold. The snow outside still fell in a steady stream, as if the world was indifferent to the storm that had just wrecked my life. The familiar hum of the engine was drowned out by the loud thudding of my heartbeat. I was shaking, not from the cold, but from the weight of what had just happened. Tyler, my son, the one I thought I could trust, the one I had raised and loved with every fiber of my being. And now he was trying to take everything I had worked for. I could still hear his voice, pleading, his words a desperate attempt to salvage something, but nothing could undo what I had just seen. The betrayal was too much. Kayla's cold, calculating smile, as she stood between us, the way she manipulated him, twisted him into this mess. And Tyler, my son, he couldn't even look me in the eye. How could I ever forgive him for this? But then the grief hit. It wasn't just the money or the future that was slipping away. It was everything that came with it. Joanne and I had built this life together. We had planned for this. Our retirement, the years ahead, spent peacefully, quietly, all of it was gone now. Just like that. And it wasn't just the money. It was the dream of having a family. A real family in my golden years. I tried to start the truck again, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. They felt heavy, useless, like I couldn't even function. I had always prided myself on being the kind of man who could handle anything that came his way. But this was different. This wasn't a car repair or a broken pipe in the shop. This was betrayal, a deep, painful wound that cut straight through the core of who I was. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the sound of the horn honking filling the truck. It was a hollow noise just like my heart felt right now. Tyler had always been impulsive, reckless even, But this was something else. This was premeditated. He had planned this. And Kayla, she had known. She had manipulated him into thinking this was the only way out. I pulled my phone out and dialed the number I had been avoiding all afternoon. Attorney Patel. He had been the one to help me with legal matters over the years, the one I trusted to guide me through the messes life threw my way. I didn't know what to expect, but I needed to take the next step. I needed to figure out how to protect myself, how to stop Tyler before it was too late. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Aaron, what's going on? I've been trying to reach you. Patel, I said, my voice flat. I need your help. Something said, Tyler. He said's trying to withdraw everything from my accounts. He said's got a forged power of attorney, and I don't said know what to do. There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost feel his concern. Aaron, I'm sorry. This isn't something you can fix on your own. We need to get some legal steps in motion. The first thing you need to do is freeze those accounts. I can help you with that, but you need to act fast. Freeze the accounts? What if it's too late? What if he already took it all? Aaron, it's not too late. But you need to stop him, and you need to gather evidence. I said I'll handle the legal stuff, but you need to document everything. Anything that proves he was trying to do this. I felt a small flicker of relief. Okay, I shall get to work on it. Thank you. I hung up, feeling a little more in control. At least now I had a plan. But as I sat there, staring out at the snow-covered parking lot, the weight of the situation hit me again. I had always been the one to handle things. But now I wasn't sure what to do. My thoughts kept drifting back to Tyler. The boy who used to sit in the shop, covered in grease, working on engines with me. The boy who had looked up to me, trusted me. And now he was the one who had put me in this situation. I closed my eyes, and the memories flooded back. Joanne and I had worked so hard for this, for a future, for a family that would always be together. I could almost hear her laugh, see her smile. It felt like yesterday that we were sitting at the kitchen table, planning our retirement, dreaming of quiet days on the porch. But now that dream was shattered. I thought about calling Tyler, talking to him, asking him why. Why would he do this? But I knew the answer already. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't even about gambling. It was something deeper, something broken inside of him. I started the truck, the engine roaring to life again. But as I pulled away from the bank, the weight on my chest didn't lift. It stayed there, heavy and suffocating. I wasn't sure how I was going to get through this. I wasn't such sure how to fix what had been broken. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let Tyler destroy everything we had built. I would fight for what was mine, for what Joanne and I had worked for, and if that meant facing my own son, then that's what I would do. I had never imagined I'd be in this position. But here I was, sitting in my dimly lit office, the same place where I'd spent countless hours working on cars, my thoughts spinning in every direction. Tyler's betrayal wasn't just a punch in the gut. It was a cold, sharp realization that I couldn't trust the one person who was supposed to carry on my legacy. The person I'd thought I could count on when I got too old to run the shop. I took a long, slow breath, trying to steady myself. The first step was to make sure Tyler couldn't do any more damage. The second, well, that was harder. My son was still my son, no matter what. I didn't want to destroy him, but I needed to protect myself, protect what was left of our life. I called Lorna Quinn. She had worked with me on a couple of small investigations in the past, and I knew she was sharp, a private investigator with the right mix of patience and persistence. I needed someone who could track down every detail, every piece of evidence, and make sure Tyler and Kayla didn't get away with this. Lorna answered after the second ring. Aaron, what sips up? I need your help, I said, my voice steady but firm. Tyler tried to withdraw everything from my accounts. He's got a forged power of attorney. I need you to help me find out everything. And I mean everything about this. Sounds like a mess, she replied. I still need some time, but I can get started right away. You're still gonna need proof for this to go anywhere. Any receipts, documents, anything that can tie Kayla or Rex to this. I was already pulling out the stack of documents I'd gathered so far. Bank statements, the power of attorney I had found at Kayla's apartment, receipts from a pawn shop where I knew Tyler had sold off some of my things. I slid them across the desk and dialed up Patel's number as I waited for Lorna's response. Okay, I've got the documents, I said, placing the phone on speaker. I said they'll get them to you. What do you need from me next? I need to know the dates and times, anything that Cephs have been recorded, Lorna said. Anything that can show they Cephs have been scheming. And Aaron, I know you Cephs have been through hell already, but I need to stay calm about this. Don't Cephs jump the gun. Just get me the info, and I Cephs dig. I rubbed my eyes. The weight of the world felt heavier each time I blinked. I had to be smart about this. I had to be careful. The last thing I wanted was to push Tyler further into Kayla's grasp. I shall get everything to you, I said. Just be quick. I don't yet know how long I have before he pulls something else. I can set afford to wait. Lorna Sitt's voice softened for a second. I know, Aaron, I shall be in touch soon. Just hang tight. I hung up, the tension in my shoulders easing slightly. Lorna was solid, and Patel had promised to help with the legal side. The next step was to get Tyler's side of the story, and to do that, I needed him to talk. The problem was, I didn't know how much longer I could stay calm. Every time I thought about what he was doing, every time I remembered that look in his eyes when he tried to justify his actions, it made my blood boil. I looked over at the clock. The days were blurring together, but I knew I couldn't let this drag out. It had been 3 days since the incident at the bank, and I hadn't heard a word from Tyler. Kayla? Not a peep. They were keeping their distance, but it didn't matter. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I spent the next few hours combing through every bit of evidence I had. I sorted through the receipts from the pawn shop, the bank transaction logs, and the document from the notary. The more I dug, the angrier I got. Every piece of evidence told the same story. Tyler had been planning this for a while, and Kayla, she was at the heart of it all. I had always known she was trouble. I had always known that Tyler wasn't thinking clearly when he was around her, but to see how far they had gone, to see how deeply she had manipulated him, it made my stomach turn. I couldn't ignore the guilt that lingered in the pit of my stomach. Part of me wanted to believe that Tyler was just caught up in something he didn't understand, that he was still the boy I had raised. But then I looked at the documents again. The forged signature, the way he had tried to bypass every safeguard I had in place, and the truth hit me, he wasn't the same person. I wasn't sure where the line had been crossed. I wasn't sure when Tyler stopped being my son and started being someone else, but I couldn't keep fooling myself. The boy who loved working on cars with me, the boy who had once admired my every move, was gone. In his place stood someone desperate, someone willing to destroy everything we'd built for a quick fix. I thought back to the last time we had a real conversation. It had been a week before the bank incident. We were sitting in the shop, working on a broken engine. He had asked me about taking a loan to start his own business. I had told him he needed to be patient, that it would come when the time was right. He had nodded, but his eyes had been distant. He'd said something then that stuck with me. I just want to be something, Dad. Something that matters. I'm not like you. Those words echoed in my head now. He had been desperate for validation, for something to prove his worth. And Kayla? She had fed that desperation, twisted it into something darker. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my eyes. I had to get to the root of this. I had to stop it before it went any further. But what could I do? Tyler was still my son, no matter how angry I was, no matter how deeply he had hurt me. I wasn't going to give up on him yet, but I needed answers. I needed him to see what he had done, and for that I had to play my part, carefully, methodically. I picked up the phone and dialed Patel again. He answered after the first ring. Aaron, I've got news. I filed the necessary paperwork. We need to move fast, but we we're on track. I exhaled deeply. What steps next? Next, we get evidence of the withdrawal attempt. You going to need to file a complaint. But more than that, I need you to be ready to confront Tyler. We can fix this unless he knows what he set's done. I swallowed hard. I set him ready, and just like that, the plan was set in motion. Tyler hadn't seen the storm coming, but he would. And when he did, the consequences would be real. The days blurred together in a haze of paperwork, phone calls, and cold, calculated planning. I had always been a man of action. I didn't sit idly by while things fell apart. But this was different. This wasn't just about fixing an engine or handling a shop problem. This was about protecting everything I had left. My future, my wife's legacy, and my son, no matter how lost he seemed. I spent hours going over everything. The receipts, the pawn tickets, the forged power of attorney. Every detail, no matter how small, could be the key to unraveling this mess. And I wasn't about to leave anything to chance. Lorna had been hard at work, following every lead I gave her. She'd tracked down surveillance footage from the pawn shop. Footage that showed Tyler pawning a gold watch from my collection, a watch I had inherited from my father, the same watch I had promised Joanne would stay in the family. Seeing that watch in the pawn shop being sold for a fraction of its worth felt like another stab in the chest. I'd had the footage sent over to Patel, and we'd made sure it was documented. It wasn't enough to take down Tyler yet, but it was a start. A damn good start. The more I worked through the evidence, the more I saw the pattern. Kayla was at the heart of it all. She had manipulated Tyler, pushed him into a corner until he thought this was the only way out. But there was more to it. She wasn't just a bystander. She was in this up to her neck. I knew that going after her would be a longer game. She was slippery and she wasn't going to fold easily. But Tyler? He was a different story. He was desperate. He was broken. I could see it in his eyes. The guilt, the fear, and that's when it hit me. If I could make him confront what he'd done, make him see the destruction he had caused, I might be able to break through, not with anger, but with the truth. And for that I needed to play it smart, play it methodical. I thought back to our last conversation, the one where he told me he wasn't like me, the one that had struck me so deeply. I hadn't fully understood it at the time, but now I did. Tyler was lost. He needed to find his way back, but he couldn't do that if he didn't see what was in front of him. I sat in my office late one night, going over the bank statements again. The withdrawal request, the forged documents. The more I looked at it, the more I realized something. This wasn't just about the money, it was about proving something to himself. Proving he was capable, proving he could make his own decisions, even if they were the wrong ones. I sighed and leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. My head was spinning. I knew what I had to do, but I wasn't sure I was ready for it. Confronting Tyler, confronting my own son, was the last thing I wanted, but it was the only way forward. The next morning I drove to the shop. The snow was still falling, but the roads were clear. I needed to focus. I needed to prepare. But as I pulled into the parking lot, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. Tyler Setzer's car was parked outside. I hadn't heard from him in days. No calls, no texts. The last time I saw him, he was walking out of the bank with Kayla, his face full of guilt. But now, here he was, sitting in my shop. Was he here to talk? Or was he just trying to get away from everything? I hesitated for a moment. But then I pushed the door open. The smell of grease and motor oil hit me as I stepped inside. It was familiar, comforting even, but it felt hollow now. This was supposed to be a place of peace, of hard work. Now it felt like a battleground. Tyler was sitting on the bench near the back of the shop, his head down, his hands resting in his lap. He didn't notice me at first, so I stood there for a moment, just watching him. The boy I had raised, the boy who had once been full of dreams, now he looked like a shadow of himself. Finally he looked up. His eyes were tired, dark, and full of guilt. For a moment neither of us spoke. It was as if we were both waiting for the other to make the first move. "Dad," Tyler said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't sit mean for it to go this far. I swear." I didn't sit down. I couldn't. I needed to stay in control of this conversation. "Then why, Tyler?" I asked. My voice tight. "Why did you try to steal from me, from your own family?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the room. I wasn't thinking straight. I just wanted to fix things, to prove that I could do something on my own. Kayla said, She said we could make it all right, that I could fix it. But I didn't mean for it to turn into this. His words stung, but they also made me realize something. He wasn't a hardened criminal. He wasn't some monster. He was just a kid, lost and desperate, trying to prove something that didn't need proving. And Kayla? I asked, my voice growing colder. She didn't force you into this. Tyler flinched, but his gaze softened. No, she didn't force me. I made my own choices, Dad. But she helped me think it was okay. She made it sound like I was doing the right thing. But now, his voice trailed off, and he ran a hand through his hair. Now I realize I screwed up, big time. I watched him, studying his face. He wasn't lying, but the question remained, was it too late to fix this? Was it too late to salvage anything from the wreckage? I'm not sure what to do with you, Tyler, I said softly, the words feeling like lead in my mouth. But I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've worked for. You need to make this right. I don't care how, but you need to start showing me that you're not the person you've become, that you're better than this. Tyler nodded slowly, his eyes full of regret. I said I'll fix it, Dad. I swear, I said I'll do whatever it takes. I didn't know if I could trust him, but for the first time in days I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could turn this around. But there was still a long road ahead, a road I wasn't sure we'd both survive. The days were starting to feel like weeks. Time seemed to drag as I waited for everything to fall into place. Tyler had promised to make things right. He had promised to take responsibility, but words were just words. I needed actions. I needed him to show me and himself that he was ready to face the consequences. But the more I watched him, the more I realized that this wasn't going to be as simple as I had hoped. Sure, he'd been apologetic, and I could see the guilt eating him up from the inside. But guilt wasn't enough. He had crossed a line, and he needed to understand that I wasn't going to let him off easy. Not this time. The pawn tickets were the first thing on my mind. They were the smoking gun, the evidence that Tyler had taken items from my collection and sold them off. Items that held sentimental value, things I had promised to pass down to my family. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the betrayal. It was personal. I took a deep breath and called Lorna. Lorna? I said when she picked up. I need you to get the CCTV footage from the pawn shop. I want to see exactly when Tyler was there, how many items he sold and who he talked to. Get every detail. You got it, Lorna replied, her voice sharp and efficient. I said I'll pull the footage from the date you gave me and send it over. It said it'll take a couple of days, but I said I'll get it done. I hung up, feeling a sense of purpose. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the evidence I needed to move forward. But there was still something gnawing at me. Kayla. She was the one who had been feeding Tyler these ideas, pushing him deeper into this mess. If I was going to do this right, I needed to handle her too. I spent the rest of the afternoon pacing around the shop, making sure everything was in order. Every so often I'd glance at the clock. Time seemed to be mocking me. Tyler was supposed to be working on his apology, trying to right the wrongs he'd caused. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. It wasn't until the next morning that I got the call I had been waiting for, Lorna. I have got the footage, she said, her voice crackling through the phone. It's not good, Aaron. Tyler was there on the 23rd, pawning off more than just a watch. He sold off a few of your tools too, the ones you had in that old box you kept behind the counter. I felt my stomach turn. The tools, the ones I'd spent years collecting, my father's tools. I didn't even know they were missing. Damn it, I muttered under my breath. Send it to Patel. I need to make sure it's filed as evidence. Already on it, Lorna said. I said also send over the pawn shop Sipser's transaction records. You shall have everything you need. I felt a wave of anger wash over me. But it was different this time. This was the anger of a man who had been betrayed, not just by his son, but by the woman who had pushed him into this. The anger I felt was sharp, calculated. I wasn't about to let them destroy everything I had worked for. I spent the next few hours on the phone with Patel, going over the legal steps we'd need to take. We had the evidence. Now we needed to move quickly before Tyler or Kayla could cover their tracks. Patel was confident that with the pawn shop footage and transaction records, we had a solid case. But then, as I hung up the phone, something clicked. Kayla hadn't been just a bystander in all of this. She had played a part, but it wasn't just about her being involved in Tyler's addiction. It was deeper. Kayla had her own agenda, her own secrets, and I had to uncover them. I made another call, this time to an old contact I hadn't spoken to in years, Rex. The bookie, the one who had been pulling Tyler's strings, the one who had put him in this mess to begin with. Rex had always been a shady character, but he was someone I could use. If anyone knew how deep this ran, it was him. Rex, I said. When he answered, my voice low, controlled. It's been a while. I need a favor. What kind of favor? Rex's voice came through the phone, smooth and measured. He had always been good at hiding his true intentions. I need to know everything you has been involved in with Tyler. I said I'm done playing games. I want to know what you has been feeding him. There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear the gears turning in Rex Sepp's head. Aaron, I don't set know what you Sepps are talking about. You want Tyler? Fine, but leave me out of it. Rex, don't let's play stupid with me. I know you Seth been pulling the strings. You Seth been using him to settle your debts. And now I Seth cleaning up the mess you created. I want you to come clean, or I Seth will make sure everyone knows exactly how deep you Seth are in. There was a long pause. I knew I had him. He didn't respond right away, but I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. Finally he spoke. I said I'll tell you everything, Rex said, his voice tight. But you Seth got to understand something, Aaron. This isn't Seth just about Tyler anymore. This is bigger than you think. That was all I needed to hear. The days following my conversation with Rex felt like they were slipping through my fingers. It was as if time had lost all meaning. Every minute, every hour felt like it was pushing me closer to a breaking point. Tyler had promised to make things right, but every word he spoke only seemed to deepen the pit in my stomach. The guilt in his eyes, it wasn't enough. I needed more than guilt. I needed action. I spent the next few days trying to keep my composure, but it wasn't easy. I had everything in place, the footage, the pawn receipts, the forged power of attorney and Rex's confession, but it still wasn't enough. I needed Tyler to step up, to admit what he'd done and face the consequences of his actions. Tyler had started therapy, as I had suggested, but I didn't know if it was for me or for himself. I watched him from the corner of my eye every time he came into the shop, but I didn't say anything. There was a part of me that wanted to believe he could change. But another part of me, the part that had been betrayed so deeply, couldn't bring myself to trust him again. I had always been a man of patience. But this was testing every ounce of control I had. It was mid-morning when Tyler showed up at the shop. He looked different today. His eyes were clear, and there was a new heaviness to his steps, like he was carrying something he couldn't put down. I didn't know if it was guilt, shame, or both, but it was there. Dad, Tyler said quietly, not meeting my eyes. We need to talk. I leaned back against the workbench, my arms crossed. I wasn't set, ready to make it easy for him. Not yet. What set's there to talk about, Tyler? You said it all already. He hesitated, then looked up at me, his face full of struggle. I stumped trying, Dad. I really am, but I stumped messed up. I know it. I don't stump know how to fix it. His words hit me harder than I expected. I had heard the apology, the promises, but hearing it from him in that moment, raw, unfiltered, made me stop in my tracks. I wasn't sure what to feel. It was the first time I saw him not just as the son who betrayed me, but as a kid who had gotten lost somewhere along the way. You cove right, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice even. You stir messed up, Tyler, but that sip's not the part that sip's killing me. What sip's killing me is that I don't sips know if I can trust you again. His face fell, the guilt returning in waves. I could see the weight of what I had said settle on him, but I couldn't take it back. He needed to hear it. He needed to know that it wasn't just about money or the stuff he took from me. It was about trust. It was about the years I had spent building a life that was now in ruins because of the choices he made. I know, Tyler whispered, his voice barely audible. I know, you don't set trust me. I wouldn't set trust me either. But I set I'm trying, Dad. I set I'm trying to do better. I watched him for a moment, feeling the conflict inside me. The pain, the anger, the hurt, it was all still there. But so was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, hope that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. Maybe there was still a chance to fix this. But I wasn't about to make it easy for him. You need to do more than try, Tyler. You need to prove it. USEP destroyed everything we had. The trust, the future, everything. And you think a few therapy sessions are going to fix that? He looked down and I could see the frustration building in him. I know it's set's not enough. But I SEP's not asking for you to forgive me right away. I just need time to show you I set Pim serious. That I can change, that I set Pim not the person who did this. I didn't say anything. I just watched him, letting the silence linger. Every part of me wanted to reach out, to hug him, to tell him that everything would be okay. But I couldn't, not yet. You don't get to decide when I forgive you. I finally said, my voice sharp. You don't get to decide when I spoke or ready to trust you again. I said I'm not some fool who sip's gonna forget what you sip's done. Tyler flinched, but then something shifted. I saw the anger flare in his eyes, but it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at himself. For the first time, I saw him as a man who had to face the consequences of his actions, and it wasn't easy for him. I'll do whatever it takes, Dad, he said, his voice low and firm. I stared at him, feeling the weight of his words, but I wasn't ready to believe him yet. Not completely. Not when the pieces were still falling into place. I hope so, I said quietly. But you don't get to rush this. You start going to have to prove it to me, over time. And if you don't sit, if you screw this up again, I won't be here to clean up your mess next time. Tyler nodded, his face serious. I understand. I said not asking for anything more. The silence stretched between us. But there was something else there too. Something fragile but real. It was the beginning of something, but I wasn't sure what. I watched Tyler leave the shop, the door swinging shut behind him. The world outside was quiet, the snow falling gently, covering everything in a soft, cold blanket. I stood there for a while, unsure of what to think. I knew I couldn't fix everything overnight, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like there might still be hope. Tyler had taken the first step, but there were many more to come, and I wasn't about to let him off easy. The courtroom was cold, not in temperature but in atmosphere. The air felt thick, the tension palpable. This was it, the moment I had been building toward for weeks, the day I would finally face Tyler, face Kayla, and confront everything that had been broken. The truth would be laid bare. There would be no more lies, no more manipulation. I sat at the table, my hands folded tightly in front of me. Beside me, Patel sat, his expression calm but with a hint of concern in his eyes. He had been guiding me through this entire process, helping me navigate the legal maze. But this was different. This was personal. This was about my son. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself that I was prepared, nothing could have fully prepared me for what was about to happen. Across the room, Kayla sat with her attorney, her posture rigid. She wasn't looking at me, but I could feel her eyes on me, like a cold weight pressing down on my chest. She had manipulated Tyler into this, used him as a pawn in her game, but now she was the one facing the consequences. And then there was Tyler. He was sitting on the other side of the courtroom, his face pale, his hands shaking. He wasn't the cocky, defiant young man who had walked into the bank weeks ago, trying to withdraw my life savings. Now he was a broken man, a man who knew he had screwed up, a man who had lost everything, or at least was about to. I couldn't look at him. I wanted to, but I couldn't. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. I hadn't forgiven him yet. I wasn't sure I ever would. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The gavel slammed down, signaling the start of the proceedings. My heart pounded in my chest. The room was suddenly too quiet, the air too thick. I could hear my breathing, feel the sweat on the back of my neck. Mr. Miller, are you ready to proceed? The judge asked, looking directly at me. I nodded, my mouth dry. Yes, Your Honor. The judge glanced over at Tyler and his lawyer, then at Kayla and hers. This is a simple case of financial fraud, he said, his voice steady and authoritative. But it is also a matter of trust. The court will hear the facts, and the decision will be made based on the evidence presented. Kayla's lawyer stood up first. He was well-dressed, confident, but I could see the nervousness in his eyes. He knew he was up against a strong case. Your Honor, Kayla Sip's lawyer began. My client admits to her involvement in this case. She has cooperated fully with the investigation and has expressed deep remorse for the role she played in manipulating Mr. Miller Sip's son Tyler into attempting the withdrawal. I glanced at Kayla, her face unreadable. Her eyes flicked toward Tyler for a split second, but she quickly looked away. I could see the tension in her posture. She wasn't as calm as she wanted to appear. I knew that she was scared, scared of the consequences of her actions. The lawyer continued. However, we asked the court to consider her difficult past, her struggles, and the manipulative nature of Rex, who is the real mastermind behind this entire scheme. Rex. The mention of his name made my blood run cold. He had been lurking in the shadows this entire time, pulling the strings, pushing Tyler and Kayla into a corner. But he was a coward. He wouldn't face the music. He was hiding somewhere, waiting for all of this to blow over. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let him get away with this. Patel leaned in slightly, whispering in my ear, "The judge is going to want to hear your side next. This is your moment. Tell him everything. Tell him how they hurt you, how they betrayed you." I nodded, my hands gripping the edge of the table. It was my turn. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky, but I kept my posture straight. I didn't look at Tyler. I didn't look at Kayla. I looked only at the judge, and I spoke from my heart. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I'm not here to destroy my son. I'm not here to punish him. I'm here because I need to protect what's left of my life, what's left of my wife's legacy, my retirement. And, more than anything, I need to protect the trust that was broken by my own flesh and blood." I paused for a moment, letting my words sink in. This wasn't just about the money. This was about everything that had been shattered. Everything I had worked for, everything I had believed in, was torn apart. And the person who had torn it apart was sitting right in front of me. "Tyler," I continued, my voice cracking slightly, "you've been lost. I know you've been struggling. But this isn't you. This isn't the son I raised. You've been manipulated, but you've also made choices. Choices that hurt everyone around you. And I'm here because I need you to understand that." Tyler's eyes met mine for the first time since we entered the courtroom. There was no defiance in his gaze, no anger, just raw, heartbreaking guilt. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to fix things. I was stupid." His words didn't bring me peace. They didn't undo what had been done, but they were a step, a small step. "Kayla," I said, turning to her, "you used him, you manipulated him, and you knew exactly what you were doing. But you said not the only one at fault here. Rex is the one who pushed all of this, and if anyone deserves to be held accountable, it's him. He used you both like pawns in his game." Kayla's face flushed, her eyes darting around the room. But she didn't speak. She couldn't. The truth was staring her in the face, and she knew it. The judge nodded, signaling me to sit. I slowly lowered myself back into the chair, my body exhausted. I had said everything I needed to say, but I knew this was just the beginning. The courtroom grew tense as both lawyers presented their closing arguments. But I barely heard the words. All I could think about was what had led to this moment. The pain, the betrayal, the hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to rebuild. And then as the judge prepared to make his ruling, I saw something I hadn't expected. Tyler was looking at me. He wasn't pleading for forgiveness. He wasn't asking for mercy. He was just looking at me like he understood the gravity of what he had done. In that moment, for the first time, I felt like I could finally breathe. The days after the courtroom were heavy. Like a fog I couldn't shake off. The judgment had been made. Kayla pleaded guilty to manipulation and conspiracy, while Tyler was given a sentence to undergo rehabilitation and community service. Rex was still out there, hiding in the shadows, but his time was coming. The walls were closing in on him. He had no way out, but that didn't make the aftermath any easier. I sat at the shop late that evening, alone with my thoughts. The cold wind howled outside, the soft whir of the shop fan the only sound in the room. My hands rested on the workbench, the rusted tools scattered around me like a jigsaw puzzle that had yet to be solved. It wasn't the shop I remembered. It wasn't the place where I'd spent hours fixing engines and building a life. Now it felt empty, hollow. Tyler had been trying. I could see that, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive him. Forgiveness wasn't easy, especially when trust had been shattered so completely. I had hoped that by the end of the trial I'd feel some sense of closure, some sense of peace. But instead, all I felt was exhaustion. I looked up as the door creaked open, and Tyler walked in, hesitating as he stepped into the shop. His face was a little softer now, like he had been through a storm and come out the other side. But he still wasn't the same boy who had walked into my life all those years ago, and neither was I. "Dad," Tyler said, his voice quieter than usual, more measured. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything. I just nodded. I didn't know what I was supposed to say to him, but I knew we needed to talk. We had to, for the sake of what was left between us. Tyler took a deep breath, sitting down across from me at the bench. He was wearing the same worn jacket he always wore, the one that had seen better days. But something had changed in him. The boy who once wore that jacket out of carelessness was now wearing it out of necessity. It was as if he was trying to find something to hold on to. "I know I sef messed up, Dad," Tyler began, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I sef hurt you, and I can set undo that. I can set fix the things I've foot done. But I want to be better." His words hung in the air like a lifeline, but I wasn't sure if I could reach for it just yet. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that he was trying to change, but part of me was still angry, still hurt, and I couldn't ignore that. "You can set just fix things with words, Tyler," I said, my voice heavy. "You can set just say you set sorry and expect everything to go back to normal. You set broken something in me. You set broken the trust we had, and trust doesn't set come back easily." Tyler nodded, his eyes dropping to the floor. I know, I know. And I don't sit expect you to forgive me right away. I don't sit it even expect you to trust me. But I sit it bulb here. I sit it bulb here. And I sit it trying." I studied him for a moment. I had seen that look in his eyes before, the one that came with a promise, with a hope that things could be fixed. But this time there was something different. This time I wasn't looking at a boy who had made a mistake. This time I was looking at a man who had to face the consequences of his actions. A man who was ready to change but didn't know how. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," I said, my voice quiet. "But that doesn't set mean I'm gonna give up on you. It doesn't set mean I'm gonna throw you out." Tyler looked up at me, his eyes wide, a flicker of hope breaking through the weight of guilt. "I mean, I'm not going to turn my back on you," I said slowly. "But you are going to have to prove it to me. Every day, I need to see that you are serious about changing, that you are serious about doing the work to fix what you meant broken." Tyler Sitt's lips trembled, and for the first time I saw the tears in his eyes. "I will, Dad. I swear. I said I'll do whatever it takes." I didn't say anything right away. The weight of his words hung in the air, and I realized something. This wasn't going to be an easy road, but it was a road we both needed to walk. It wasn't about fixing everything overnight. It wasn't about wiping the slate clean and pretending it never happened. It was about rebuilding, slowly, carefully. Tyler stood up, his eyes fixed on mine. "I still start tomorrow. I still take the therapy more seriously. I still work here. I still do whatever you need." I nodded. "Good. We'll take it one day at a time. But just know this, Tyler. I said not going to let you destroy everything I said built, everything your mother and I worked for. I once set let you down," Tyler said quietly. "I promise." And for the first time in a long while, I believed him. Not fully, not yet, but I believed that he was finally ready to change. and that was enough to give me a glimmer of hope. As Tyler left the shop, I sat there for a long time, letting the weight of everything settle. The fallout from the trial, from the betrayal, was still there. The consequences were still in motion, but something had shifted. Something small but significant. Tyler had taken the first step, and maybe, just maybe, it was enough to start rebuilding. But it wasn't over yet. There were still pieces to pick up, still trust to rebuild, and I wasn't sure how long it would take. But for the first time, I felt like we could make it through. It wasn't the kind of justice I'd imagined. It wasn't the triumphant moment of exposing all the lies and watching my enemies crumble. It wasn't the kind of closure that a man hopes for when he's been wronged. It wasn't clean. It wasn't neat. It was messy, raw, and imperfect. But it was justice. My justice. A week had passed since the trial, since everything had been said and done. Kayla had pled guilty to her role in the manipulation. And Rex, he was still out there hiding in the shadows. But his day was coming. The legal system was slow, but it was methodical. It was working its way to him, bit by bit, like a slow-moving storm. Tyler, though, he was the one who had to live with the consequences of his choices. His life wasn't over, but the road ahead was going to be long and painful. I knew that, but I also knew something else. He was finally facing the truth. We were still working side by side in the shop. It wasn't the same as it had been before the betrayal. There was no easy camaraderie, no comfortable silence between us. But there was something else, something deeper. An understanding, a willingness to rebuild. Every day Tyler showed up, did his work, and said the right things. But actions, not words, would decide if we could ever truly get back to what we were. I didn't want to forgive him yet. I wasn't ready, but every day I saw him try. And that was all I could ask for right now. It was late in the afternoon when the knock came. I hadn't been expecting anyone, but there, standing in the doorway, was the last person I expected to see. Rex. My stomach churned, a wave of nausea washing over me. I stood frozen, unsure of how to react. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had hoped would never come. The man who had orchestrated all of this, the one who had pushed Tyler into this mess, was standing right in front of me. Rex looked different, though. His usual bravado was gone. He wasn't dressed in the crisp suits he used to wear. His face was gaunt, like he hadn't slept in days, and the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. He was cornered. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold and steady. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing he had affected me. "I need to talk," Rex said, his voice hoarse. "I know I've got no right to ask for anything from you, Aaron, but I need you to listen." I crossed my arms, my eyes narrowing. "I said I'm listening, but I don't think you have anything left to say that I care about." Rex swallowed hard, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "It's not about me. It's about Tyler. I I never meant for it to go this far, but I couldn't sit stop. I had to keep control. You understand?" I shook my head. "No, Rex. I don't understand. I don't think I ever will. You took advantage of a kid, my kid. And for what? To cover your own mess." He flinched at my words, but he didn't set back down. "I made mistakes. I know that, but I set not asking for your forgiveness. I set asking for you to give Tyler a chance. He didn't set have a choice. I made sure he didn't set." I didn't say anything for a long moment. I didn't know what to think. Rex was a coward. He had always been a coward, hiding behind others while pulling the strings. But now, seeing him standing there, broken, desperate, I realized something. He was a man who had been crushed by his own choices, a man who had pushed others to the brink, only to find himself on the other side with nothing left. "Tyler sits on his own path now," I said finally. "He sits the one who has to live with what he did, not you, and he sits the one who has to fix it." Rex's face tightened, but he nodded. "I know, but I've been trying to get to him, trying to make things right. I've been, I've been helping him from the shadows, and I can't keep doing it. I'm no good for him, Aaron. I never was, and I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you that I regret what I did. I could see the truth in his eyes. For the first time, I saw Rex as he truly was, not the confident, ruthless bookie, but a man who had lost everything he thought mattered. And I knew then that no matter how much I hated what he had done, I couldn't change it. I couldn't undo the past. But I could still do one thing. You were right about one thing, Rex, I said quietly. You lost everything. And maybe that saps your punishment, but you still have one chance to do something right. Stay out of my son Sep's life. Stay out of his way. Rex nodded, his face a mix of relief and defeat. I will, I promise. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did, and I said sorry. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. His apology, though long overdue, was enough. But that didn't mean it was enough to undo the damage he had done. Rex left the shop, disappearing into the fading light of the afternoon. As the door clicked shut behind him, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The storm was over, at least for now. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. There was still a long road ahead. Tyler was still trying, still learning, and so was I. I wasn't sure if we'd ever get back to the way things were, but for the first time I believed there was hope. Hope that maybe we could rebuild together. The dust had settled. The courtroom drama, the weeks of stress, the cold confrontations, they were all behind me now. Tyler had started to take responsibility for his actions, and I had started to believe, however cautiously, that he could change. Kayla had pled guilty, her part in this whole mess out in the open. Rex was on the run, and while I knew that I hadn't fully exacted the justice I'd wanted from him, I also knew that sometimes life's greatest punishments came not from the hands of the law, but from the loss of everything you thought mattered. The shop was quieter now, the noise of the engines and the clinking of tools a faint echo of what it had been before everything came crashing down. It wasn't just the physical changes, it was the emotional landscape. The void I had felt, the trust that had been shattered was still there, but so was something else. Something fragile, but real. Hope. I sat on the bench, the place where I had spent so many late nights, and looked at the work in front of me. It was just another engine, another job to do, but for some reason I couldn't focus. My hands, which had been so steady before all of this, were restless. I was thinking about what had led me here, about the man I had been before this all happened, a man who believed in family, in trust, in hard work, a man who thought his son would be the one to carry on his legacy. But now? Now, I wasn't so sure. I wasn't sure if I'd ever truly trust again, but I also knew that the person who had betrayed me wasn't the same person standing here now. Tyler had changed, but so had I. I looked at the clock on the wall. The shop was empty, save for me and Tyler, who was somewhere in the back, working on one of the cars. I hadn't spoken to him much today. I didn't know what to say. He was trying, yes, but I couldn't forget what had happened. It was too fresh, too painful. But then I thought about Joanne. What would she have wanted me to do? She would have wanted me to fight. She would have wanted me to protect our family, to make sure that our legacy lived on. But she also would have wanted me to give Tyler a chance to make things right. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff from sitting for so long, and walked over to the counter. I had a letter in front of me, one I had been meaning to write for days but had put off. It was time to let go, to move forward. I picked up the pen, my hand steady, and began to write. Tyler, I don't know if you'll ever fully understand what this has done to me, what it's done to our family, but I do know this, you're trying. And for that, I'm grateful. You made a mistake. A big one, but we all make mistakes. And you're right, you don't get to fix things with just words. But you're doing the hard work, the real work, and that's what matters. I know where this road leads. I know if we still ever be the same, but I do know this, I thup here. I thup not giving up on you, but you have to earn that trust back. One day at a time. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope. It wasn't the grand gesture I had imagined, the dramatic moment where everything was forgiven, but it was something, it was a start, a beginning of something new. I didn't know if Tyler would ever read that letter, but I did know that I had to write it for me, for him, for our family. The shop door opened, and Tyler walked in. His face was tired, but there was something else there too. Something different, a new determination. "I've done for the day, Dad," he said quietly, looking over at me. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I know said it before, but I mean it. I'm working on it. I'm trying. I just wanted you to know." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him. The boy I had raised, the boy I thought I knew, was standing before me, trying to be something better. And for the first time in a long time, I saw the glimmer of the son I had loved. "You are doing better," I said finally, my voice hoarse. "But you have to keep showing me. You can just say it. You have to prove it." Tyler nodded, his eyes downcast. "I know. I will." I didn't need to say anything else. We both knew what this meant. The road ahead was long. There were still wounds that needed to heal, but there was a chance. A real chance. I watched him walk out of the shop, his back straight, his steps more certain than they had been in weeks. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while: peace. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was real, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. It had been a few months since the trial, since everything had fallen into place. Tyler had kept his word. He had stayed true to his promise, showing up every day at the shop, working hard, putting in the hours. His progress wasn't immediate, but it was real. We didn't talk much, but there was a quiet understanding between us now, the kind that didn't need words to be said. But just because things had settled didn't mean everything was fixed. The past still loomed over us like a shadow. The betrayal, the lies, the broken trust. They were still there, still fresh in my mind. I hadn't fully forgiven Tyler, not yet. But I was trying. Trying to see him for who he was now, not just the boy who had torn everything apart. I spent more time reflecting during those quiet moments. I'd been so focused on protecting what I had left, on making sure the pieces of my life didn't fall apart, that I hadn't really taken the time to process everything. Joanne had always been the heart of our family. When she passed, I felt like I lost a part of myself. I tried to fill that emptiness with work, with a sense of duty, but it was never enough. I had thought that I could protect everything she left behind by keeping it safe, by keeping everything in place, but in trying to protect it, I had built walls. Walls that kept out the people I loved the most. I had to let go of the idea of perfection, of keeping everything just as it was before. Life was messy. It always had been. The only thing that mattered was how we picked up the pieces and moved forward. Tyler had made mistakes. He had made a huge one. But he was trying to fix them, and that's all I could ask for. It was a cold night when he showed up at the shop again. I wasn't expecting him. I had just finished a late shift, the place empty and silent, except for the hum of the lights above me. He walked in slowly, a nervous energy in his step. "Dad," he said, his voice hesitant. "I know things aren't sent perfect. I know I've got a long way to go, but I wanted to thank you for giving me a chance. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm going to keep working for you, for me, for May, for Mom." I looked at him for a long moment. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't know what to say. It wasn't the grand reconciliation I had imagined in my head. But it was enough. It was more than enough. "I said I am proud of you," I finally said, my voice quiet. "You come a long way." Tyler's face softened, and for the first time I saw something that had been missing before: relief. He didn't need to say it, but I knew what it meant. We stood there for a while, neither of us knowing exactly what to say. But it didn't matter. The silence was comfortable now. It was different than before. Before it had been awkward, filled with tension and resentment. Now it was filled with something else: understanding. "I'm still working on it, Dad," Tyler said softly, as if reading my thoughts. "But I'm not giving up. I won SEP." "I know," I said. "Just keep doing the work. That's all I can ask." The sound of the shop door closing echoed in the quiet room as Tyler left. I stayed behind for a moment, looking around the shop, letting everything settle. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that, for the first time in a long time, felt like enough. I wasn't sure what the future held for us. I didn't know if Tyler would ever fully regain my trust. I didn't know if we would ever go back to what we were before, but I knew one thing: we were on the right path. We were both trying, and that was something worth holding on to. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had been given a second chance, a chance to rebuild, to forgive, and to move forward. And that was all I needed. It was the end of another day at the shop, the sun setting low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the workbenches. The familiar hum of the shop, the scent of oil and grease, had become the backdrop of my life again. But it was different now. It wasn't just work anymore. It was healing. It was finding some semblance of peace amidst the wreckage that had been my life for so long. I had spent months processing the chaos, the betrayal, the pain, the endless nights, wondering how I would ever come back from what Tyler and Kayla had done. And now, as I stood in the quiet, the final chapter was beginning to close. I was locking up the shop when I noticed something. It was an old photograph tucked inside a drawer I hadn't opened in ages. I pulled it out and stared at it for a long time, the years suddenly rushing back. It was a picture of Joanne and me, taken right after we opened the shop. She was standing beside me, smiling, that warm smile of hers, her hand resting on my shoulder. We were so full of hope then, so full of plans. Our future had seemed endless. I ran my fingers over the glass of the frame. I had clung to the idea that I had to protect everything we had built, preserve it just as it was. But the reality had been different. I couldn't protect everything, and the truth was I didn't need to. The lesson I had learned, the hard, painful lesson, was that nothing stays the same. Life is about change, about growth. And sometimes the things that seem like the worst moments of our lives turn out to be the moments that shape us the most. The moments that allow us to rebuild, to let go of the past, and to make room for something new. I took one last look at the photo before placing it gently back in the drawer. The door to the shop creaked open, and I looked up to see Tyler standing there, his hands shoved in his pockets, a hesitant look on his face. He didn't need to say anything. I could see it in his eyes. He was still carrying the weight of everything he had done. But there was something else there now, too. Something I hadn't seen before. Hope, a real hope. "You know, Dad," he said quietly, almost sheepishly, "I've been thinking a lot lately. About everything. About what I've done. And I just want to say, I'm sorry. I know I've got a long road ahead, but I'm not giving up." I stood there for a moment, the words echoing in my chest. This wasn't the big, dramatic apology I'd expected. There were no grand gestures, no promises that everything would be fixed overnight. But that was the point, wasn't it? The road ahead was long. I wasn't sure where it would take us, but in that moment I realized that it didn't matter. Tyler was trying, and that was enough. "You already come a long way," I said, my voice steady but soft. "But you are right. There's are still work to do, and are still here. I's not giving up on you either." Tyler nodded, his face softening as he took a step closer. And in that moment, I realized something else, something I hadn't expected. I had spent so much time trying to fix what had been broken, trying to preserve the past, that I had forgotten the most important thing: the future was still ours. Tyler's and mine. And no matter how much I had been hurt, no matter how much trust had been shattered, there was still time, there was still hope. Tyler stepped forward, extending his hand, for the first time in what felt like forever. I reached out and took it. The gesture was simple, but it was everything. A promise, a beginning. "You still have a lot to prove," I said with a slight smile. "But I'm willing to see where this goes." Tyler smiled back, a genuine, hopeful smile. For the first time I saw the man he was becoming. Not perfect, not yet, but trying. I stood there for a moment, shaking his hand, and in that small, quiet action, I realized that everything had changed. Not just for Tyler, but for me too. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy, and the past would never fully fade. But the future was ours to shape. As the door to the shop closed behind us, I felt something stir in me, a sense of closure, but more importantly, a sense of peace. And that, I realized, was the final irony. All this time I had thought justice was about punishment, about righting wrongs. But it wasn't. It was about understanding, about growth, and about the ability to move forward. The past would never be perfect, but the future could be.